before we get into really the challenge that we're facing today, I just wanted to give everyone on the line just a brief history about ImageSource in case anyone on the phone isn't familiar with who we are. We're actually headquartered in Olympia, Washington, and we've been in business since 1994. We work in a number of different verticals, but for this webinar today, we're really going to be focusing primarily in the government space as we look at public records requests. We have a number of highly experienced teams here, and we've got expertise in deploying solutions both on-premise and in a cloud model, specifically around software as a service. But we've also got folks that are looking at hybrid models, and so we have a lot of experience doing different types of deployments and looking at different business processes as well. Again, for this webinar, we're going to be focusing specifically around public records requests. One of the things that we're going to just touch on today is the importance of having an experienced partner and the right technology to help mitigate the risk around responding to public records requests in a timely fashion to hopefully avoid litigation. ImageSource has been assisting our customer partners with public records requests and storage of records since we've been in business. But really over the last few years, we've received a lot more requests from our customer base around how we can assist with dealing with the number of requests that they're getting in. And so we as an organization can definitely help identify some of those areas of vulnerability. We're currently working with King County here in Washington to look at how we can help them overcome some of the challenges that they've been facing as they deal with public records requests. And as I mentioned, technology can really help slow some of the acceleration of the requests that we're seeing and assist with some of the automation and the functionality that's needed to respond to these requests. So as Jack mentioned, we've seen a huge increase in the number of lawsuits related to the Public Records Act and the Freedom of Information Act, and we believe that that trend is going to continue to go up and to rise. And so again, in talking with our customer base, folks are trying to figure out how to address the number of requests that they've received and how to deal with responding to these requests in a timely fashion, and really trying to determine what tools are best to address these requests. Some of the organizations that we've talked to and work with actually retain these large reserve funds to protect them against threats and if they have to go to litigation. And I don't know if some of you have read in the news that there are some government entities that have had to look at bankruptcy because of the size of the litigations and settlements that they've had to pay out. So when we are talking about assisting with public records requests, I know one of the biggest things that we hear is around tracking. For those of you on the phone that live in Washington State, and if you're familiar with the public records request process, or maybe you're in that department within your agency, you're obviously probably familiar with the performance metrics that are required to be reported on here in the state of Washington. And we've listed some of them on the slide here, but there, like I said, there are about 17 different metrics that agencies are required to report on. And what we're finding and what we're hearing from talking to our customers is that there really is not a good comprehensive tool to allow them to collect that information internally and then be able to report on the information that they've gathered in an easy and streamlined fashion. And so I wanted to just touch on some of the universal challenges in regards to the tracking that I just mentioned. And so again, what we're finding is that a number of organizations are using a plethora of different products to allow them to fulfill public records requests. So folks are looking at are using and looking at things like Adobe, Excel, Outlook, and even Access databases to perform necessary steps and provide the tracking information that's needed. This just creates a lot of different checkpoints and multiple steps in the process. It's easy to lose, documents or requests in process, and then it introduces various platforms essentially that people have to work through just to ensure that the appropriate information is included in the request. And it allows for duplication of information to be entered in multiple places in some cases. We've heard again that process transparency is really important to constituents, especially when they're requesting records from organizations. And again, what we're hearing is that there really isn't an easy way to track the life cycle of a record throughout its process of a records request. And so, in some cases, a constituent may have to call in and see where their request is in the process. I know that there are some laws around, reporting and response to requests and how much time agencies have to respond. But it just allows for bottlenecks and holdups in the process, and there really isn't a clear way or an easy way to push requests through a process during a slowdown. Maybe someone's on vacation or on leave. And so those things all can slow down the response of a request. And then the other thing that's important that we're hearing is there really isn't one place to get a comprehensive audit trail. And because people are using these different technology platforms, it's really difficult to get all of the information, the audit information that people are looking for in one location. For some of you on the phone, these two items may be of importance, redactions and email. For some of the folks that we've talked to, if they get a large volume request that needs a lot of redactions, that can be just a completely labor-intense process and very cumbersome. One of the examples I wanted to use was at King County, one of the departments actually received a request from a constituent, and the product of that request was going to be over 75,000 records, and more than half of those required redactions. And so originally they were looking at a solution to hire 2 temporary employees for a period of about 18 months. It potentially could have been longer depending on how long the redactions were going to take. And then they had to redact certain information on those documents based on the specific exemption. So a lot of personal identifiable information, income information, and things like that. And so we were able to assist them and help them cut down the time it took to process some of those redactions that were really in the same location every time on the same type of form, and just, again, cut that process down for them. One of the other big areas that we hear about is around email and just how challenging it is to take a PST file or take a collection of emails, convert those to PDF, and then be able to redact those. And so really, we're trying to help folks look at ways that they can take those files and quickly and easily convert them to a usable format in one step and reduce the number of clicks without crashing, your Adobe client. So at this point, I'm going to actually hand the presentation over to Randy. He's got a few slides that he's going to go over with you, and then he's going to hop into the demonstration for you today. I'm going to go ahead and give Randy the controls. And the platform is yours, Randy.
Okay. Well, okay. Can you see that screen, Christina?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to dovetail off of the information that Christina has presented, and we're going to start mapping some of these challenges into capabilities that you're going to want to look for to meet these compliance and these request delivery regulations. So there's 7 of them. We're going to start with self-servicing, and we have a motto, self-service everything. We firmly believe in pushing as much information out to your constituents, to your requesters as possible. One of the key things is allowing them to search for previous requests. There's no use troubling them to fill out forms and wait for things to arrive if there's already information available that they can take advantage of. Certainly, we don't want to duplicate any of that effort. And if we get to a point where they do need to submit a request for documents, we want that to be a web-based form. It could be available from any device 24/7, but we want those forms to be smart enough to validate some of that key information. I don't want to get a request that doesn't have an email, for instance, or a phone number or an address or whatever that governing criteria is. So we're going to push that validation off to them to make sure that they're giving us good information. We also would like to allow them to come back in at any time and get a real-time status on the request. we don't want to have to answer a phone. They don't want to have to come into the office. And so this is a great capability. And then once the request is fulfilled, they may choose an option to actually have their results made available through that same type of self-service environment. So once a request comes in, one of the first things we're likely going to do is to solicit information throughout our organization, different departments, maybe even outside of our organization. And we want to provide flexible channels for this information to come back into this body of documents we're gathering for the request. So whether that's a web form, whether they can simply attach a few documents to the email and hit reply, or maybe they've got a big document set and we're going to provide a network pickup folder where they can copy information in, and those documents and that information will be consumed automatically and placed into that body of documents. We also want the system to allow for the collection of time spent data. So whether it's me personally going through some of the redactions, whether it's somebody outside of my department having to go through their document trove or look through a different content system, we want the ability to be able to gather the time that they spent and collect that and be able to report on that. Now, Christina mentioned one of the tedious aspects of collecting information is often around email. So what if I'm given a 5 gigabyte PST file from my IT folks, and now I have to figure out how to extract that content from that big old database of email? So you want a system that's going to allow you to do that quickly and efficiently. So let's just say we're at a point where we have all of our content. It's sitting in a single location. I've got controls around who can access that. Now I start the process of reviewing and redacting that content so that I can get it ready for release. I want a system that can pre-process some of that. Standard things such as social security number, date of birth, credit card numbers, perhaps even court case numbers, anything that I can apply a pattern to, I want to go ahead and pre-process that so my users don't have to fiddle with manually doing that. But there are some things that we're going to want to redact on a case-by-case basis, things that we want to redact that are like a person's name, where maybe it's just 1 out of 100 names in a document. But we want the system to see what I'm doing if I have to apply these manual redactions and learn, so that the next document that I open, there's an option that I can just apply those same redactions. The John Doe that I'm looking for in the previous document and redacted, I just want to automatically redact that in the next set of documents I'm looking at. I also want a system that's going to allow me to do audio and video redaction as well. And also, you see on the slide here, next. We want heads down throughput, streamline abilities to work through these documents as fast and accurately as possible. And that includes an easy review and approve process, whether that's one person or two, and the ability to really be able to go through that very quickly. So one of the things that we hear is that once this body of documents has been prepped for request delivery, and we put it out there, whether that's through a thumb drive and a physical delivery, whether that's out on an FTP site, very often there's this queasy feeling that I think we probably looked at every document, and yeah, probably every redaction was looked at, and yeah, it's probably pretty good. What we want is a system that's going to eliminate that uncertainty and allow us to be 100% sure that every document that we're putting out there has been reviewed, every redaction has been reviewed, and I get that confidence that what's going on is what I'm expecting, and it's going to keep me safe. Now, the underpinnings for this system that I'm looking for needs to be enterprise level. It needs to be something that I can put 100 million documents in if I wanted to. So scalability, options for business continuity, highly secure, all of these things are frameworks and foundations that are very important in a system that's managing this type of information. Also, what we've found as we work with different organizations at the state level and county levels is everybody has a little bit different way that they want their workflow to look. They have different requirements for whether this should be approved or this can be approved. Can this be released as a native Excel spreadsheet, or do we need to convert that into a different document format, such as PDF-A? So we want a configurable workflow. And we also want a system, as we're working through here, to make sure we're not duplicating a bunch of content, so deduplication of content. And then once all of this information is released, we want the ability to apply retentions or records managements to that. After release, maybe 10 years or 7 years or whatever the retention schedule looks like, I want to get rid of that. Or maybe I want to dispose of it to a downstream system. So we want those capabilities as well. And in terms of delivering, we want options here. We want a secure portal. We want the ability to put this up into a secure FTP site. If I want to email documents out, it's a small set. I want to be able to do that, as well as allow somebody to come in and get a physical copy of this information on a thumb drive or maybe DVD. And tracking and reporting of how that information is delivered is important as well. And finally, in terms of the system capabilities, what we want is visibility across my entire environment. So starting at the lowest level, every action that is performed on a request, we want to audit who, when, and what. And we want the ability to create custom dashboards. Well, a system that has some out-of-the-box ones, that's great. But I also want to be able to customize those and secure those. So not everybody has access to every single report that's available in the system. And then in terms of how I want to purchase this type of capability, I'm looking for a SaaS solution. I want a lower upfront investment. I want someone else to manage the updates and security patches and things like that to the system. And I also want an elasticity when it comes to my high volume periods of the year. So I can scale that system up automatically and then scale it down when I'm hit one of these slow periods. Okay. So with that, let's hop over to a quick demo. And we're going to start with the self-service capabilities that I mentioned. That's the first of the 7 capabilities that we're looking for. And what you see on the screen right now is the ILANX Public Records Portal. And this is just the home page we can create. This is a turnkey option. Or if I click over here to My Home, we have some components that you can embed, portlets, you can embed directly in your website. And of course, theme those to make them match your look and feel. We have areas for notifications and alerts. Maybe we've hit a point in the process where we need to pay. Payment processing as an option. I can submit a new request, see what's going on in terms of my existing requests that are out there and what we call in flight, and then my completed documents. So let's just start over here with my request. This is going to look into the system, and it's going to show me everything that's going on that I've initiated, the requests I've initiated, what type they are, and what status they're in. So you can see some dates and request numbers, and this can be configured based on what you'd like to show your constituents. They can flip over to the My Documents and then get a list of all of the documents that have been released to them. And of course, they can open these documents up in their browser and check out that content with the coded redactions. And we'll get into how this is actually compiled here in just a second. So let's go over and click the new request. And this is going to pull up a web form. And again, this is available on an iPhone, on a tablet, on basically any platform. So we don't have to just keep this system limited to public requests. We can put other types of forms up there. But today we're talking about public records requests. So I'm going to click on this. This form can be available to your website as a link or a pop-up or embedded in your site as well. And it's pre-populated here because we're logged into a secure portal. I'm going to change some of this information, and we're just going to pick a kind of a John Doe guy. I'm going to give it a different name. Let's go with Kevin White. Got some fictitious information here. I'm going to use this email address so that we can watch what happens from a correspondence perspective. This form can be tailored. We have some really nice capabilities to create that smart form capability. So as I choose different selections, the form changes as well. And we're going to say, I want information on case number 19 blah, 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 4. That's the information I'm requesting, and I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Gives me that thank you. Your information's been received. So immediately, now that I've submitted that request, I could come back over here to my request sections, and I'm going to see that pop up in the list, and we're processing. And so this is where I would come back and self-service rather than picking up the phone and calling somebody. So let me open up my Gmail. And we should see some correspondence from the system there. And this is completely tailorable for your solution. You can put whatever verbiage in here you like, and you can also use any of the workflow information. So this is just a basic, we've received your request, come back for more information, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to switch personas. We're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to be now the person responsible for starting the process of gathering this information inside my organization. So I'm going to log into Alex Records Director. And once I log in, the first thing I'm going to see is a list of workflows. Now, I mentioned that we could start other types of processes from those other forms, and so that's what some of this other information is. Typically, we would just limit your average user down to the request direct processing. So I can expand this list of work tasks. This is all configurable to show you whatever is most important in whatever order. Here's Kevin White. That's the request that just came in. I'm going to collapse some of this to give us more screen real estate. So right now I'm looking at the Alex Records Director dashboard for this particular request. I see the high-level information of who requested it. I can go back and I can look at that form and all of the details that was provided by Kevin as he submitted that request. Got some key information that's going on here with some document graphs and whatnot that will be updated as information is collected and processed for this request. So the first thing I'm probably going to do is ask my coworkers or colleagues in other departments for information regarding this request. So I'm going to ask Randy at Image Source to give me information about any information he has relative to this request. Now, the good thing here is I don't have to fill anything out. That's all going to be taken care of by the system. And so if I wait here just a second, I'm going to get an email and I'll drag it over on this screen. This email has been formulated by the system. Again, this is a template. You can change this however you'd like. And it's going to ask me to provide all relevant content. I can click on this, I can preview this, and this is just that form that Kevin provided. So there's all the original details at my disposal here. And I'm going to collect this information via an e-form, a web form. Now we could also, as I mentioned in the presentation, we could make an FTP location, a network folder. I could just hit reply to this if I have one small document. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and hit the web form. This is going to give me just some information about the request, who I am basically, what the request number is, and the information there relative to what Kevin has asked for. And I've got two options. I can choose that I have content to upload or I do not have content to upload. And that's important because it's great if we've got folks that we're asking for content that can provide that, but we also need to know if they don't have any content so that we can prove diligence in searching for, the information relative to this request. So I'm just going to select a document, sample document. We'll work with one document. And then I mentioned that we have the option to collect an estimate of the hours spent so that we can report on this. So that was pretty quick. I knew exactly where that document was, so it just took me 0.1 minutes or hours to collect that information. Thank you for submitting the information. Okay, so now if we come back over here, we can hit this refresh button over on our email status, and we can see that we have received that one email response back. It was to Randy at Image Source. We sent it out. He replied on this date and provided one document. And over here in our time spent, we have a tracking that it took him 0.1 hours to collect that information. I could also add, any time in here if I come back in periodically to find documents. I can add time tracking entries in here as well. So you see we've got a couple of working documents here. If we came back over here and hit refresh, we're going to see that document that I provided through that e-form via that email solicitation. So that's good. That can go on in background. We could have sent out 100 emails or a distribution group, and we're just waiting for content to come back in through those channels. But the other way that I can start processing is if I have access to content myself. One of the things I mentioned was the email and PST files. we've got a really nice way that we can open up and browse PST files, search for information there based on dates, based on subject matter. So if I was looking for some Microsoft information in this PST file, I got one result. I want to go ahead and extract the header information out. So the system's going to kick that off. And I'll look in that PST file based on our criteria, process that, it's done. Now, if I refresh, we see we've got this document that came from Microsoft. We could pull out the attachments to that. We look down here, we see all that gross stuff that is attached behind your email with all of the network routing and things like that, which may or may not be part of what you need to disclose, but that's an option for you. The other way is just to manually upload some documents. So I'm going to go out here to, I've got some samples. We're going to grab a couple of these. We're going to upload those directly into our body of documents here. And so let's just say, for instance, this is ready to go. There's other documents could come in behind the scenes, that's fine, but I'm ready to start processing my documents here. I'm going to open up this email. This was a confirmation email, so Kevin already has a copy of that. There's no need to redact that. But I mentioned that next concept and being able to quickly process these documents. And so this dialog here gives me the ability to submit this document for approval, optional notes, and what do I want to do next? Well, I want to open the next document for working on it. And so it just provides that very quick way to go through these. I don't have to go back and hunt back through the list and open them one by one. So here we have a real document. We start seeing some sensitive information. Now, of course, I can come in here, and if for some reason I want to manually redact something, I can click the little redaction pin. The first thing it's going to do is ask me for a code. How do I want, what exemption do I want to apply to this, this particular redaction I'm going to apply? So I'm going to say this is medical. I'm just going to make this up. And we'll grab County of Los Angeles. So over here on the right, we've got our properties. So that's been coded as a medical record. I could change that if I'd like. But now I need to get to the business of really redacting what's in here. And I see John Doe listed. So we're gonna need to redact John's name. I can go one by one, and so I can check to see if that in fact needs to be redacted in that instance. More than likely, I'm going to say I want to just redact all the John Does in this document. And this is personal taxpayer information. So it found 8 matches, and it's going to redact all of those throughout all of these pages in this document. I also see his wife's name here, Jane Doe. So we better get rid of Jane Doe as well. 6 matches found. We're going to redact all of those. So that's great. Names are going to be very, very difficult for a system to automatically redact because there are other names, I'm sure, in this document that we can't redact and need to be disclosed. For other things, I mentioned Social Security numbers, so we can apply an automated redaction for Social Security numbers. So we're going to hit this advanced redact, which is going to do all of them in the document. And it found 15 matches, and boom, it just redacted all of those Social Security numbers. So it wasn't just John Doe's Social Security number, but it was also Jane Doe's Social Security number. So it uses a pattern matching technology to do that. So at this point, we'll say that we have redacted everything, and we're going to save and submit this for approval. And I'm just going to go on to the next document. Okay, so I'm starting to see some of the same information in this document as what I've already been working with, so I don't want to have to redo that work. So we have this auto-redact capability, so the system keeps track of what I've done and what I've redacted and allows me to change if I need to for this document. I can remove it from the auto-redact set, and I can just hit OK. And it's going to go through the entire document, and it's going to redact all of those things that I've already redacted in previous documents. So I could continue on and do additional redactions, but we're just going to say save and approve. We're going to need to redact all of the same things here on 6 matches. Now, normally, of course, I would go through each of these pages and make sure there wasn't other information that needed to be redacted. This was the form that Kevin submitted, so there's no reason to redact any of this information. This was the Microsoft email we found. We're going to pretend that it's all safe, good to go. And we're all done. Congratulations. We're all done with that set of working documents. So I could hit refresh just to make sure nothing's come in from an email or an e-form in the background. We can come back over to our dashboard. We've got 6 documents waiting in approval. All of our outbound emails have been responded to. So at this point, we're good. We've got all of the documents sitting in the approval state, so we're ready to submit this on into the workflow's next step. So this would be someone else in the real world that would come back in here, and they would do the same thing I did at the beginning. I'm going to refresh my list. And there's our Kevin White. And so now we're going to switch personas again, and now I am that approver person. And so my role is different. My role is just looking at these documents that are sitting in the approval queue and going through these redactions and making sure they've been applied properly, everything has been hidden that needs to be. I can choose to apply more redactions. This one, there's no redactions. It's our Microsoft email, so yeah, it's good for release. This was the original form, no reason to redact that. Okay, now we get to some documents that's a little more interesting. They have redactions. So I want to be able to go through this pretty quickly, and that's what this panel on the right allows me to do. I can recode a redaction if necessary. Otherwise, I just do approve, 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 and it's going to guide me through this document. I can reject a redaction, and now I can send that back for further work. We're just going to go ahead and approve that. We're at the end of all the redactions, so we are ready to release this document. On to the next one. Now, we're going to go through the same process for each of these. We're going to have to look at each one of these redactions and make sure they're all applied correctly and completely. I think we've got one more of these to go. I'll just go through this quickly, approving all of these. A lot of them in this document. Okay, we're done. Save. And we've got that original correspondence email, so it doesn't need redacting. So we're all done. All of our approvals have been done, and now all of that content has been prepared. We've taken the original that we've worked on. We have applied those redactions. We've burnt them into the document along with the code that was appropriate for what I selected during that redaction process. We can see information here about the page counts for the documents, the number of redactions that were applied to those individual documents. Approvers and reviewers there, not very interesting because I stayed logged in as that same user. And so at this point, we're ready to deliver this set of documents to our requester. So I could select one of these documents, any number of these documents. I'm just going to go ahead and select all of them. We're going to say deliver documents. Now here's where we talked about the flexibility in the delivery channels. This system's not hooked up to our portal yet, so the portal option is grayed out, but I could send to FTP, I could stage for a DVD burn or a thumbnail, or I could email this set of documents, and it's going to zip all that files up, break them up into size, the correctly sized chunks. Obviously, I couldn't send a 500 meg zip file through the email system, so it'll break those up, whatever size you want them to. I'm going to select FTP. We're going to click Deliver. So the system is going through, taking those documents now and creating whatever delivery channel needs to be created to get those to the user emails, creating FTP folders, setting up security, and it's sending an email, which I'll show you in just a minute. And so it's going to take just a second here as that information is processed and staged. From this view, I can see, page counts, redaction counts, approvers, when it was released, delivery dates. I can see channel information. So we chose the FTP folder. If I had chosen email, it would show me each of those emails that went out and how these individual documents were zipped and broken down. And then I refresh, and now our status is delivered. So let's flip back over real quick, back over to Kevin's email. And we have a verification from the system. Hey, Kevin, and again, this email is a template that you can change. We've got some documents for you. You can click on our FTP site. And so this is just a standard browser FTP, which is kind of ugly. Or we can choose to present them in a little prettier way. Why it's translating that. And so this is a list of documents that we have delivered to Kevin. So if we open one of these, what we're going to see is that final PDF with our redactions burnt in. This is an image-based PDF, so there's no underlying text behind it. There's no possible way this information could be extracted at this point. And we have all of those redactions coded based on the type of exemption that we had selected during our redaction process. Okay, so the last step, if we come back over here to our panel, we see that everything has been released. We're good to go. We can actually submit this request, which is going to finalize this request, and it's going to do several things. One of the things it's going to do is generate a very detailed report of the process we've just been through. So here's our Kevin White. It's sitting in the archival queue. We're going to open that request back up. We see that things are now grayed out. It's been released. There's some history about when it went out. But basically, all of this information is still available to me in read-only mode. So all of the internal audit information, user actions, et cetera, even the release documents that we can pop open and look at if we want. But I wanted to show you this final report. And this is something that you could choose to disclose. It's just totally up to you. But this is a report that the system generates. It talks about all of the details about the workflow, when it was started, when it was completed, and then the details about the request itself, who, where, when, what, and also the release document summary. So this is a list of the details about the release itself. So the document count, redaction count, page size, page count, total size of the documents that were released, total redacted pages, redactions applied, et cetera, et cetera. Also, the email solicitation. So if I had sent that out to 50 different people, we would see a table here, much more interesting, with lots of email addresses, request, respond dates, docs provided, et cetera. Now we move into the uglier part of the report. This is the audit for the workflow. Every person that even opened that request, not to mention modified anything, is included in this audit report. And then when we get down to the bottom, we have a detailed release document audit. Each of the documents that we have sent out, how many redactions were applied. So some of these were 0. We get down here to the more interesting ones. So we've got this last document here, 30 redactions. 4 of the pages were redactions. Here's a list of all the codes that were applied. Reviewers and approver, again, I was just logged in. Otherwise, it would list who reviewed and approved all of that content, and then the release and delivery date for that content as well. So this just gives you kind of an idea of what that process looks like. I'll show you one more thing before we finish up with the demo. We've got some dashboards. Again, these are out of the box, fairly basic, but you can customize, tailor these. You can create new ones with our drag and drop iLinks analytics, which is part of the Records Director product. And you can create custom reports with pie charts and grids and bar charts, area charts, donut charts, or you could just create just a report, and all of this is sortable. I can drag and drop and group pieces of information. If for some reason I wanted to download these, I can download the report or download the dashboard as kind of a snapshot in time. This one isn't relevant, but I'll just click on, we have an invoice dashboard here for some other reason. Just give you a little idea of a different looking dashboard. But again, you can configure these, drag and drop all these widgets wherever you want them to be, and you can secure these dashboards. So maybe you've got a C-level that has one set of dashboards, and you've got some managers that have a different set of dashboards. All right, so that concludes the demo portion of this. Let me hop back into the PowerPoint here, and we'll get this wrapped up. All right, and I'm going to turn this back over to Christina.
Thanks, Randy. So we hope that the information that we provided in the slides and the demo was helpful. Really, the 3 things that we were hoping that you got out of the presentation and the demonstration, and really 3 things to remember is that you know, the number of public records requests and litigations around those and settlements around those is exploding, and we anticipate that that number is only going to continue to grow as technology changes, as you know, more information is coming into organizations, types of content is changing, So again, we anticipate that the number of requests that we're going to see for different types of content and information is only going to continue to increase. Organizations definitely need to look at a solution that's going to be something that they can use that's going to be defensible, and look for a solution that provides the audit trail that Randy was talking about, really for litigation and for tracking purposes. Again, we touched on the requirements in Washington State around tracking and reporting on those 17 different data points. And so having all that information in one place that's easy to grab and report on just makes things so much simpler. And then lastly, looking for platforms that are simple, easy to use, provide one user interface where you don't have to go to multiple platforms, multiple programs to input information, to grab information. Really providing that end-to-end functionality for your public records users and employees within your organization is just going to make things so much easier.